Welcome back. We have learned how to pre-render content using getStaticProps. But what about pre-rendering dynamic routes? For example, now we have pre-rendered this specific page, which is the home page, right? And remember, we can pre-render based on a page. So this page is essentially pre-rendered. But if we want to pre-render this page, it will have its own set of functions. It will have its own set of code. Just because this page is pre-rendered does not mean that this page will also be pre-rendered. But notice one thing, that this is a dynamic route. Dynamic route could be anything. How will Next.js know that it needs to pre-render this specific ID and this ID? So in order to just pre-render the page, we can easily do that with Next.js. And we already did that, right? Because we used getStaticProps. So you know this already. We can essentially pre-render content using getStaticProps. But in order to pre-render dynamic routes, in order to tell Next.js that, hey, by the way, out of these million possibilities that what a dynamic route could be, these here are a set of IDs that to pre-render. So can you please do that? So Next.js provides us with a function called as getStaticPaths. Now similar to getStaticProps, getStaticPaths are only for dynamic routes. It allows us to define a list of paths to be rendered to HTML at build time. After implementing this specific function, we need to give Next.js all the IDs. That, hey, these are all the IDs that I want you to pre-render. Now, there's a lot to getStaticPaths that we will keep exploring throughout this course as we build the app further. But first, let's take a look at some set of rules before diving into code. getStaticPath rules. Now, the first rule is common between getStaticProps and getStaticPaths, that it can only be exported from a page file. Now, it needs to be a page. If it's not a page, we cannot use getStaticPaths because Next.js won't know to basically pre-render that path. getStaticPaths is meant for dynamic routes. As the name says it all, getStaticPaths. Give me the static paths, right? So the paths term is telling you that you are going to give Next.js the list of paths, the list of IDs that you want to pre-render. And lastly, page must also implement getStaticProps. So here is the difference. Now, if you do want to pre-render content, we need to use getStaticProps, which we already saw. So in our case, we want to pre-render this specific dynamic route. We still need to implement getStaticProps. But in addition to that, since this is a dynamic route, we need to also implement the function getStaticPaths. All right, I hope you got a good understanding of getStaticPaths. I'll see you in the next one where we can dive into code.